Thanks for having me. Um, when I first saw the names of the other speakers, am I echoing? Okay. I was horrified. I may hold a PhD, but it is in poetics, which means the making of poetry. However, when I saw Catalina's diagram of the book equaling the chapter, the sentence, the letter, the metaphor, for me was brilliant because I received an E in biology because my school didn't give Fs. So it was really helpful. It was wonderful. But then I realized that we share more than one theme, not just autism, all of us, but an impetus, a passion for learning more about autism and serving parents and children in the autism community now and in generations to come. And all of us share narratives and discoveries of trial, error, experimentation, and ultimately success. Like the progress of those surrounding me, my work proceeded with the help of professionals and friends, community, friends. I'm going to emphasize that. The crucial difference here is that what you're about to hear from my narrative may include fiction, as it is a novel. However, the parts that I'm reading, the descriptions of what happened with my daughter and me, are all based on fact. They are fact. They are things that really happened. During my older daughter Cecilia's diagnosis at the age of 2.5, and of autism and the painful years that ensued, and which ultimately led to her placement in a group home at the age of 7. Also included is a semi-fictional account of a mother and family faced with death of loved ones and significant mental illness. Cece, my daughter, whose real name is Cecilia, and she was named after the patron saint of music, she was diagnosed on St. Cecilia's Day. Just a coincidence. She happens to love music. When she hears music, she runs back and forth, and her calming thing is to listen to headphones. And she likes country and Western music. She is nonverbal, and that's her kind of medium. She lives in a suburb of Minneapolis, very close to where I live, and I'm able to see her on a regular basis. I'm able to go to her team meetings, her day program meetings, her doctor appointments, and to spend holidays and birthdays and weekends with her. More factual accounts of what happened to our family can be found in Andrew Solomon's book. A lot of you may be familiar with his work. He wrote The Noonday Demon, an Atlas of Depression. He also wrote something called Far from the Tree, which is a study of families where the parents are so profoundly different from their children. And my ex-husband and I both have degrees in fields regarding language and writing, and Cece is nonverbal. Anyway, he has a whole chapter based on our family. So after Cece was placed, a best friend of mine from Barnard would call me on a regular basis and say, "So have you written anything that can be soon to be a major motion picture?" Because she wanted me to move back here and make scads of money and live back in New York. So I kept saying, no, I don't have anything. So she encouraged me to go forward. She also had a friend who was an agent, and I got something together. I would go into the basement, freak out, and write about what was going on. And eventually I mailed her something, and she gave it to her friend who was an agent. And God bless her, she liked it. And she said, "Can I represent you?" And I thought, no. I mean, of course, right? So we moved forward. The other friend who helped me to be here today is a dear friend from when we were, 16, 17, and 18 years old. I'm so blessed for my dear friend, Dr. Dorothy Grice, who is the Director of Residency Education in Adolescent and Child Psychology here at the Icahn School of Medicine and Director of the OCD and Tic Disorder Program. And Dr. Grice's husband, Dr. Buxbaum, who's the Director here of Autism Research. So the world of autism is small, but it's vast. When Cece was diagnosed, we were told that she was 1 in 10,000. Because today you all know that the percentages are alarmingly higher, regardless of the way the diagnosis is defined or the spectrum is measured. So many theories have been considered in the course of Cece's diagnosis. My sister called the night before Cece was diagnosed and begged me not to vaccinate her. I've never argued with her over this, but I still feel resentful over the fact that she said it, and I've never brought it up. I know she was wrong. Now, in Minneapolis, where I live, the largest Somali community outside of Somalia lives, and there has been a campaign of misinformation because the autism rate is very high among the Somali community. And there's been a horrible outbreak of measles that's affecting the rest of the community. And I feel heartbroken about this, as I'm sure a lot of people do. Anyway, Cece was also born, she was born in Buffalo, New York, which is near Love Canal, if any of you remember what happened there. It was a nightmare and a source of great pollution. I happen to have a cousin who has 2 sons with autism. One has more severe, as they say, autism, and one has more mild autism. One is verbal and high functioning. My cousin's father and my father both had bipolar disorder, and both were heavy drinkers. Maybe that was alcoholism, or maybe it was self-medication. We don't know. They've both passed away. Cece's father has schizoaffective disorder, which we didn't know when we had Cece, and I have a severe depression and anxiety. So I know that people here are working on those connections. Cece had an MRI at one point because a teacher believed that she might have petit mal seizures. She had the MRI, which was horrible to see your child, hooked up to wires on her head when she hated it so much, and I just kept asking the nurse to get her French fries because that relaxes her. And it proved nothing about her brain function. Anyway, the only thing unusual at Cece's birth was that she had an ear tag, a little piece of skin, and a pediatrician examining her at 2 years had a concern that this could be the sign of, quote, an anterior malfunction, which I had never heard before and have not heard often. She snapped her fingers on either side of Cece's head, and she said, "She's not tracking. I want her to have a hearing test." And when Cece was a month old, I sat in a rocking chair nursing her, and they put little headphones on Cece, and she passed the test. So, she has spoken 4 sentences in her lifetime. When she was 2.5, I gave her a cookie, and she pushed it away, and she said, "You eat it, Mommy." And we thought, oh, she's going to talk. A little while later, I turned off the television, and she said, "I want my TV." And then there were a few other instances where she said one time, "I want the lights on." And it was so clear, it wasn't muttered or anything, it was a complete sentence. So we thought, okay, it's coming along, it's slow, but she has it in there. And I've often thought, it's a traffic jam in her head, it's just, something stuck, Well, she is nonverbal, okay. We moved from Buffalo to Albany. We planned a second child who was born when we moved to Minneapolis. And in the book, the child based on Cece is referred to as Maeve, and the child based on my younger daughter Molly is referred to as Cleo. The husband/father is referred to as Pierce, and the narrator is Bridget. And the sections I'm reading from pertain mostly to the experiences of Maeve and Bridget. The concerns, the diagnoses, the therapies, the heartbreak, the support, and the consequences. And there is no reference to vaccines or other theories. And I just want to warn you that the word retarded is used, and I'm sorry for offending. It's part of the story and part of, during her diagnosis, those are the words I was thinking. I don't use that word anymore. And I make a point of educating people who do, as I'm sure you all do. Excuse me. So I'm just reading around from little bits. The first line of the book I stole from Huckleberry Finn when he says, "You don't know me." But this is just a reference back to that first line. Well, as I said before, you don't know me. And if you did, and I told you anything about what's happened since I got here, you'd say to yourself, not aloud, that happened to her for some reason. Karma, a lesson to be learned, she took drugs or forgot to pray. It could never happen to me. I know you think that because I used to think that. Those bizarre misfortunes of life, those tangled ventricles of possibilities taking the wrong pathways, the pathway that leads living people into the world where death seems to be around the corner, where horror lies like a lagoon between you and the next step. People love to think it couldn't happen to them, or they console you with, quote, God must know you can take it. See, I could never withstand that kind of pain. God must think you were very strong. People actually say this shit to me. I used to nod and say, oh, I guess so. Now I say, well, actually a lot of people can't tolerate it. A lot of people commit suicide or become drug addicts. Then people inch away from me and I think, well, if they're trying to be nice, maybe they could try being a little more sensitive too. Platitudes are anonymous, a special kind of insult. Let's skip ahead a bit. As part of the annoyance of pain I feel on a regular day, take this for example. I notice that my daughter Cleo needs, warmer pants because it has snowed and we are planning to go for a walk. I go to the basement and open boxes of clothes that Maeve, my 5-year-old, has outgrown. I find the perfect pants, the ones I bought for Maeve secondhand at the Kips Bay Boys Club thrift shop on 2nd Avenue for $3. They're thick plush corduroy, a deep velvety gray. And I remember how perfectly they fit Maeve, how she would wear them with a little cowgirl shirt, how darling Maeve was and quiet, and able to keep herself occupied so I could rest, and how we had no idea that anything was wrong. Suddenly, the pair of pants becomes an emblem of innocence and horrific realizations. Suddenly, a pair of pants is breaking my heart, and I'm holding Cleo saying, you look so beautiful, and waiting till my heart tears before I pull back from her. Why should she know how a pair of pants can make a mother crazy? And this is on a really good day. A popular chant these days. For example, tonight I put Maeve in the tub because she was digging holes in her skin again. The running tub water distracts her from picking at the mosquito bites in her legs. Maybe the water cleans out the sores. And I go into the living room to see if Cleo will stop crying if I put on Arthur video, or if I'm so close to the end of mothering resources that I will concede and give her the ice cream sandwich. After I unwrap the ice cream sandwich, which I return to Maeve, who is happily floating in the tub, pushing small brown things around, little brown things that are disintegrating, little brown things that are shit. Oh, Christ, oh, God, help me. I scream, get out of there, get out, Maeve. But why do I think she can understand? She's still smiling. I yank her out and her heavy self falls and slips against the side of the tub. And then there is shit in her hair and shit on my hands, and she is laughing. I finally lay her on the floor and start yelling for Pierce, who I realize is not responding and is probably outside with some chicken wire, but I keep yelling anyway, thinking it's doing me some good or will help Maeve to know that something is wrong. I can't put her back in the tub because the shit has to go down the drain, and I can't rinse her off in the sink because she's too big, so I put towels on the floor and soak washcloths in the sink and squeeze them over her head and watch the water run down her sides. And then I see the hole still open in her leg and think, great, shit in an open wound. Please, God, let me get to that antibacterial cream in the closet behind me before she darts away and leaves a trail of wet shit everywhere. I lean back and secure the door, reach up and swing open the cabinet, find the third tube from the left, the one I need. Hurrah! Cream on her leg, antibacterial soap all over the body, baby powder drying. Maeve, it's done. All right. Things will be fine. Sorry about the S word. Okay. Here's the adventure. The next day, the three of us bundled up for the coming snow and trudged to the car and out of the car and into the clinic. Cleo had to have a snack, which meant nursing, in the waiting room, and I hoped that there was no law against nursing in public here. Once my bra was unhooked and Cleo was latched on, Maeve darted off to the escalator. Maeve, please come back, I shouted while trying to keep Cleo in place and keeping my bra and whatever else covered. Maeve! She stopped for a minute, perched at the edge, looking down. Then she began to lick the rubber handrail. I almost made it over to her, doubled over, trying to retain a lap, Cleo still sucking, before an older woman with a moose sweatshirt yanked Maeve away from the escalator and guided her towards me. She smiled as I thanked her. Then she said, "It must be very hard for you." Why did she say that? Because I am obviously nursing an infant while chasing a toddler? Or was it obvious about Maeve? And what was so obvious that I couldn't see it? They called us into the office and everything seemed friendly enough, if a little cramped, but we settled and said hello, and Cleo was dozing, and there were pictures of animals on the wall. This would be okay. Maeve was playing with the stirrups on the examining table, and the doctor talked to her quietly, saying, "Would you like to see how the table moves up and down? And do you want to play with my stethoscope? Can you hear your heartbeat? Where is the tiger on the wall? How about you draw a picture for me on my prescription pad?" He handed her a pen. She turned away from him. She responded to nothing he had said, and then it got worse, and it all moved in slow motion. His assistant gets out some building blocks and some cards and puts them on the floor. I've seen this assistant before. She's efficient, if curt. Sometimes she smiles if I smile at her long enough. Right now, she's looking only at the doctor. Her hair is thick and straight and has 4 strands of silver. She has clasped it all back in an elegant enamel barrette. She reaches for Maeve's hand. Maeve lets herself be guided to the floor. The assistant asked her to pick up the green block and put it on the red block. Maeve reaches for the woman's earrings. She moves back and asks Maeve to hand her the card with the flower. Maeve reaches around the woman's head and runs the tips of her fingers against the enamel barrette. So the assistant looks up at the doctor, and the doctor says to me, "This may not be the right time to do this. Why don't you have her come in with your husband later on in the week? Then you don't have to bring the infant in." She didn't respond to anything, doctor. I'm looking like I'm begging. He averts his eyes. No, she didn't. The assistant is busily whisking the toys into a bag. Any idea of what it might be? The assistant leaves the room without a nod in our direction. The doctor closes the door. Has anyone mentioned autism? Someone from the preschool special education program told me there's a spectrum of developmental delays. Pervasive developmental disorder is what he said. That's what I'm pleading for. I'm trying to stay away from the autism word. Yes, he says. He takes a seat next to me. But delays can give the wrong impression. It's more accurate to say disorder. It's not as if Maeve will be able to catch up. And he must see the terror in my eyes because he adds, if that's indeed what this is, but I'd like you to see a specialist. Immediately, he's standing and writing on a pad and adjusting his glasses, probably thinking, phew, I got that out without having to see her cry. He hands me the slip and adds, "Do you have support in the community?" "No." It's an easy answer. "We just moved here 3 months ago. My husband's touring in Europe. My mother's in Boston. Could she come and give you a hand?" She's booked on a flight to Rome tomorrow. She wants to see my husband's show, and she's having a reunion with some college friends. I see. There's a silence, and I wonder why I felt the need to divulge all that. Was it to tell him that really no one is here? I know no one. Could he be my friend, or at least tell me that he's wrong about all this? What he says is, "Let me know if we can be of any help, if you need a referral for yourself, and let me know how the visit with the neurologist goes, okay?" "Thank you," I say. Maeve is banging the stirrups again. The doctor disappears. I can drive because I am not crying, because why would I cry when I'm sure that I didn't just hear what I thought I heard, and I'm also sure that this is a mistake, and why would Maeve care for blocks when an enamel barrette is lovelier? Dangling earrings would distract anyone from a card of a flower, for God's sake. And the doctor is nice and everything, but he's just a pediatrician. But to hell with it, because the snow is coming down, and I have to concentrate on the windshield wipers, which stick, and the flakes are as big as a pinwheel, which I hope means no accumulation. There's just no option but to order pizza and watch cartoons. Excuse me. Jump ahead. This next section was written when, if you tried to download something on a computer, like a picture, it would go like this. And eventually you'd see like a face or a flower or something. At least that's what happened to my computer. So I want to know what real time is. I keep seeing it in the crime novels I've been reading. In addition to the computer games I'm drawn to these days, to crosswords and crime novels, fictional events that present a pattern, a solution, and an end. Is real time something that happens in a discrete moment? Something that does not produce trails of legacy? Is real time something that is not memory? So Maeve and Pierce and Cleo and I live in real time? Then time I cannot bear. One day I thought I had figured out neurosis. Neurotics want to escape time. They want to live beyond the minute. They use worries from the past as fuel to propel them into the future. Past worry gets pasted onto images of future danger. By leaping from past to future, you get to completely avoid the present. So obsessive worry is a sort of time machine, but it's not real time. Real time is that scene from The Twilight Zone when the people get stuck in the quicksand and just keep going slowly down, is the tiny, tiny, smooth grains roll against each other and bit by bit pull down all surface. Surface is not surface any longer. Surface inverts, and down you go. Maeve is shrieking. I've phoned the psychiatrist because she is smashing herself into the furniture as hard as she can, and she is running outside and pulling off her clothes. This to me is a signal that the environment is closing in on her and she is trying to get it off her, thus bouncing again and again into the chair, ripping off the textures on her skin, picking holes in the mosquito bites on her legs, standing in the shower and turning the dials to hot to cold, and shrieking. The outside sensations of the world must feel to her like sand stuck between her toes, like jelly on her fingers, like flies around her face. I try to distract the textures away from her by taking off her shoes and socks and pressing my fists into the arches of her feet, rubbing lavender foot lotion against her heels as hard as I can, bouncing her leg sockets back into her hips by shoving my palm into the bottom of her foot. Then we sit on the floor, and I wrap her legs over mine and my arms around her shoulders and rock back and forth and sing, "Row your boat." This is real time. Or is it? I think it's lapsed. If you download a photograph of a person onto a computer monitor from the internet, you see first some hair, and then nothing, then an eyebrow, then nothing. Then the top half of some eyeballs, then nothing. Then more eyeball, then nothing. And you're thinking, what the hell is this person going to look like? I can't tell the first thing about them with just eyebrows. Where's the goddamn nose? And that's what this real time feels like here. A little bit of autism. The hair. Can you tell what it looks like now? Here's another stripe. One piece of eyebrow. Can you predict the shape of the rest of the day? If you get an eyebrow, can you predict the way her future will look? Whether or not she will need to be in a group home when she is 10? If we give you a piece of cheek, can you tell if she will develop skills? An ear comes down, and now can you tell if she is severely retarded? If she will have caretakers in a group home? If they will abuse her? If her money will be stolen? If her sister will visit her when her parents are dead? If she will love a man or a woman or a pet? If at age 30 she will be standing in a hardware store with a personal care attendant, flapping her hands, rocking from side to side, foot to foot, letting out intermittent barks, is that what elapses in front of me? Or can someone or something punch through the screen and take the image by the throat, twist it, wring it out, give me my girl as tall as a sunflower, heliotropic, basking in love and care and strength and affection, dear God? Okay, Cece started going to a wonderful school. Preschool. Okay. Maeve has started at Pendleton, her new school. It is a private nursery with mostly typical kids. Each classroom has one or two special needs kids. Maeve seems to love being there. There are indoor swings in the gym, and trampolines, and Play-Doh, and magic markers, and chalkboards, and fat pieces of chalk, and tiny sand pits in the rooms and sinks that she can reach, where she puts her hands under the running tap until someone stops her. But she loves her bus ride most of all. It is an abbreviated bus, which makes it look chubby. It has one of those special doors on the side for lowering wheelchairs that scared me, when I first saw it pull into the driveway. But the bus driver is a woman who brings her baby along on the rides, so I figured I couldn't ask for a better driver. Still, that first day, I buckled her in and started to cry. This is her first day, huh? The driver smiled at me in the rearview mirror. Yes, she just turned 4, I sniffed. Would it be okay if I drove behind you? Sure thing, honey, that would be just fine. And I followed the bus to every stop, every driveway, saw a little girl in a wheelchair get lifted up the mechanical bus ramp. And we stopped at the apartment building where the mother ran downstairs holding a blanket. Inside was her son, but he was so thin, it seemed like she was just holding a blanket. She held his hand as he sort of staggered up onto the bus, and then she hurried back inside. At the school, I parked and watched the children get off the bus. A flock of teachers appeared at the door. A young woman with bright white hair took Maeve's hand, carried her Elmo backpack, and guided her towards the door. So I put my head on the steering wheel and cried some more. From the day she was born, I dreaded the day she would get on a bus and go off to school. But I had no idea it would be like this. How's my time? Cool? Okay. I'm going to a mother support group at Pendleton. We sit in a circle and talk about our kids who are disabled. Maybe you're thinking it's a pity party. Maybe you're thinking, what a hideous group. Why would you want to hang out together? Because you're the only people who don't freak each other out? Or maybe you're thinking it's a 12-step class where we discuss stages of something, like stages of grief, shock, denial, bargaining, acceptance. And I'm forgetting a grief stage here. But really, we're kvetching, and we're finding out stuff from each other, like how to get a social worker, or how to petition for a better social worker, or how to get a social worker to answer your calls, or how to describe the disaster of your life so the social worker can report to her superior that maybe you need more services, more support from outside agencies, summer school, something. For example, this is what I learned today from Tina. She explained that even though her ex-mother-in-law allowed Tina's retarded son to play with Hanukkah candles and light them, and astoundingly lit his clothes with the matches, the social worker could only classify it as an accident and would not take steps to make sure that the obviously irresponsible woman would be required to have supervised visits with her severely disabled grandson. If the incident occurred more than once, however, it would look like a dangerous situation, and steps would be taken to assure his safety in the presence of a grandmother. So we learned from Tina that the magic number is 2. Document 2 near-fatal incidents, and social services will advocate more for you. Tina started to cry and said we would all think so much worse of her if we knew that the idea of Kenny's death had crossed her mind. Not death by fire. No one would want a death by fire. But the idea had crossed her mind as a form of, should we say, relief. Our elegant group leader, Esme, said, I doubt there's one of us in this room who hasn't had that feeling, Tina. Now you're thinking, how could we? How dare we be so selfish that we think of how much easier life would be without our disabled children? I know you're thinking that because I thought it. Before Maeve, I thought that anyone who, quote, gave away a child with a disability was a weakling, a coward. Why would these children be sent away? Why would someone be grateful that a child with disabilities died early? Listen, we're wrestling with a God who asked us to step onto the mat. We're bargaining with a deity who's pulled aside the curtain and peered right into our souls. There are no secrets left. We're just here breathing or gasping. We have no Dr. Spock for the disabled. We have specialized handbooks depending on the syndrome. We have grief manuals. We have missives of inspiration. But nothing sticks. Nothing solves. Nothing answers the big questions. So when Tina says that she thought that life would be easier if Kenny died, I felt grateful. I'm thinking, thank you, God, for letting me not be the only one. Even when I lie next to Maeve and she rubs her soft legs against mine, and I think of her whole self being like wax in the moonlight, glowing her own steady, strange light for her own secret purposes, even then sometimes think life would be so much easier if she didn't have to be trapped inside her autism, inside her body, this life. And I glance at her quickly and think, tell me you're not telepathic. Tell me you have no clue that I just considered myself better off without you alive. But tell me if you can read my mind, then you forgive me my ignorance and selfishness, since for all I know you are my guardian angel and I am blessed to have you in my presence. Sabine said she was partially relieved when she was told by the doctor that her son's longevity was compromised. Jeannie said that she lost a baby to sudden infant death syndrome, and the grief was easier. It kind of ended. It was horrible and sad, but it sort of closed up. With Jamal, every day seems like pain. It's not that she wants to lose Jamal. Really, she doesn't. But watching suffering is worse. Jamal has such high muscle tone that his body is usually twisted and his face is often contorted. I have seen her lean over that wheelchair and kiss that drooling and contorted face. I have seen her love him completely. Guess what? Maeve is tantruming while Pierce is on the phone trying to figure out if his insurance rate will go up since he backed into an old woman in the supermarket parking lot, and Maeve is moaning in her special shrieking moan. And I'm hiding in the basement playing a computer game, pretending to Pierce that I'm actually setting up my tutoring schedule that will accommodate Maeve's therapy times. I turned off the sound on the computer game so that Pierce won't hear the telltale splash when the little rats fall off the brick rooftop. I have set the game at the hardest level, and I play the same setup of the same game again and again, and I still haven't won. I keep doing it because I have to feel like I might get somewhere if I only concentrate, instead of thinking, kind of pathetic, isn't it? You had a big dream about moving to London with Nessa, the cousin who died, and maybe marrying some composer who conveniently also happened to be a viscount or a duke, and maybe having some darling blonde boy whom we named Clamwell the 3rd or 12th, who would romp happily in our massive garden. But Nessa's dead, and you got artistic and autistic and blonde curls, but you never made it to London. Then I remember something from one of the books I'm always reading, the books with the transcendent themes that help me to step outside of the present pain and help me to hover over my situation and look at it as if it were just happening. Just as if I were walking by something in a store window and thought about buying it but kept going. Just a scene, a piece of the menu I barely considered before I asked for the turkey club on roasted wheat. Anyway, the books help me with disassociation, pulling myself out of the junk of me. And one of the books that I love says that we create hell by wishing that things were other than they were. There are days when I'm Dante then, and today is one of them, because I wish things were other than they were. I wish my house were just big enough so that I didn't stub my toe against Pierce's chair when I have to open the door to the laundry. But there's nowhere else for Pierce's chair unless he were to eat standing up, which I try to discourage as I work on convincing myself that even though we don't have real furniture or picture frames or hanging paintings or standing lamps, because these are all things that Maeve loves to destroy, we can still have manners, a little elegance, more wishing things were other than they are, that I could stop what I'm doing whenever Maeve needs me and fix what it is she needs, that I could stop thinking I could fix Maeve, that I could help Maeve without pushing her too hard and without feeling that I want to give up on her, that I could hush myself into a stream. How much time do I have? Okay. Tomorrow is Maeve's 5th birthday. As I coaxed her into the shower about an hour ago, I told her that she was going to be 5 and that kids in her class would have donut holes and sing happy birthday. Cupcakes are troublesome, the teachers tell me. They are too big and crumbly, and you have to send something that's prepackaged so that no one at school is responsible if there's poisoning. Anyway, Maeve didn't acknowledge this news any more than any other news, but I think she'll know when the kids sing her name. Her support aide wrote a note home this week saying that Maeve is beginning to let other kids play with her and hold her hand. Sometimes when I pick her up after her therapy sessions, I am enormously proud of all the work she does. This week she nodded her head and she said, we think she said, no. And Sue, the therapist, and I got all excited and proud and congratulated Maeve. And then I went home and thought about it and realized the truth of the matter. Sue and I are always saying we think we see change. She's different this week. She gave me real eye contact. I think she said, Mama. She pushed me away, but when she wanted me to leave. But the behaviors add up to the same thing. She has autism. We don't know what she hears or experiences or feels. We don't know if shaving cream on her arms feels like spiders to her. Or if Cleo crying sounds like nails on a blackboard. We don't know if the sound of Maeve's own name sounds like radio static. We don't know. We don't know. I have to skip ahead, excuse me. Days go by and sorrow slips in and the moon rounds out and shines me into a puddle of hurt. This is why. Pierce has gone into another manic episode. The doctor's first concern is to make sure he doesn't get too high. Here is a pretty little fact. Most bipolar folk risk their lives more when they are high than when they are depressed. When they are high, they lose judgment and are more likely to think that they can drive very, very fast, or fly, or climb bridges, or dance on ponds. But not with Pierce. They batten down his hatches so fast and sure that he reminds me of Daktari shows, when the tiger is stung by a dart that sedates him and he's thrown into a net and wakes up on an examining table a day later. Pierce is like a sleepwalker. He falls asleep in the middle of the day and wakes up saying he can't sleep. And Maeve. Maeve has started something new, hitting and kicking us. She does this when she doesn't want to do what we want her to do. Go to the museum, for example. It's cold, and I've been in the house with a drugged Pierce and a tantruming maid and a bored Cleo for 4 days now. So I say we have to go to the museum, and Pierce, bless his heart, agrees to the fact that maybe it was his idea. But Maeve hates the museum. It feels like everywhere people are staring while this large 5-year-old who looks like she's 8 is moaning in strange tones, more like lowing. Then I think, how come I care about other people staring? It's the kids staring that worry me. Kids are mean. But why won't Maeve stop fighting us? What's so bad about leaving the house? Is this what we have to look forward to from now on? But getting home doesn't do any good because all Maeve wants is to get into the bathtub and have hot water pour down her toes and again and again. The first time this is, of course, just a bath. Most mothers would be thrilled to have a child who wanted a bath over and over again. It's very clear to me, Tina is telling the support group. We know that fat helps to create the lining for the nerves, and we know that sugar provides energy. Therefore, it is very important that if we are to soothe our nerves and maintain energy, essential goals for mother with special needs kids, we must consume diets high in fat and sugar. As much as I want to resist that, I tell her, I see no way around it. This manifesto is the basis for our new sub-support group. We meet every other Thursday night at Tina's because she has shared custody, and Tuesday nights her house is child-free. Driving to her house, I feel light. No one is in the back seat of the car. I turn the radio up high, Counting Crows, Mr. Jones. I'm singing along badly and loudly. I feel like I am getting away with something. And when I walk in Tina's front door and take off my shoes and my feet sink into her soft carpet, I definitely feel illicit. Carpet, clean carpet. Carpet unmarred by chocolate or peanut butter or berry juice. Joanne has brought a lasagna. I have joy of cooking brownies. Kay has brought a tiramisu. No salad available. Ah, shucks. I'm skipping this. Here's something I hope that the parents can't relate to. My first call to 911. I had heard in the support group that it happened, but I couldn't imagine that the time would really arrive. Maeve is desperate to get out the door. I've just taken Cleo and Maeve for a long walk in the wagon. Motion is the only thing keeping Maeve from hurling herself against the window and breaking glass. But Cleo has fallen asleep and I can't leave her alone in the house. Maeve pulls a chair to the door, stands up and flips the lock, tips the chair, falls. I run after her out the door. She's in the street. I run, no cars, thank God. I grab her. She throws herself to the ground, won't move, screams. We're in the neighbor's driveway and she rolls over on the pavement and then tries to get into the neighbor's car. I pull Maeve back and she drops to the ground again. I fall from the weight of her, tip back on the pavement, hit my head. A neighbor 2 houses down is watching from his porch. If he would only look directly at us, I could help him, ask him to help me get her in the house or call 911, but he turns and walks away. I drag her until she gets up and runs into the house. I run in after her and get the phone because I know she'll be out the back door in a heartbeat, and she is. And I dial 911, and the connection is awful because I'm chasing her across the neighbor's lawn because she got through a gate. I see a curtain pulled shut in the next house on the block. I get through to 911. My daughter's autistic. I can't get her in the house. I need someone to help me, please. I wait. I'm running, at least trying to pull her backward towards the house so I can hear if Cleo wakes up and I can call to her that I'm here, somewhere, she needs me. Walking while holding Maeve very close seems to help the slightest bit. Then she drops her bottom to the ground again. I fall on top of her. Some kids riding bikes slow down and then speed off again. When the fire engines come, no siren is blaring. How did they know not to turn it on? They pull in the driveway. Maeve climbs up to the engine door and quietly gets in. Can we take her for a ride and see if she calms down? Oh, yes, thank you, I say. She doesn't talk. Her name is Maeve. They pull away down the block. I hunt down a cigarette and wonder if a fireman can reprimand me for smoking. I look at the sky, I look at my fingernails, I look down the street. Even the neighbors I know don't seem to be around. I look in the window at Cleo. Her snores are incongruously loud. The fire truck comes back. She was fine the whole time, the fireman says. Oh, good, I say. Can you help me to get her in the house? I reach for her hand. She drops to the driveway and starts moaning. What do we do? One of them asks. Stand on either side of her and lift, I suggest. She rolls away, they back up. She gets on her knees and begins to moan and flail. They take another step back and look at me. What can you tell us about autism? The bigger one asks me. She senses everything more intensely. I have to shout over the moaning. One fireman is cupping his ear. The other one is kneeling on the ground trying to reach for Maeve, but she keeps slapping him away. Something is probably bothering her that we don't know about, I shout. Maybe if I can get her in the bathtub, I'll be able to call the doctor. Won't she hit her head in the bathtub? The one on the ground asks. Not if the water's running, I say, and get down on my knees next to her to stop her from pulling up the grass and stuffing it into her mouth. At least that was quieting her. I look up at the standing fireman. He steps closer, his arms awkwardly held open like he doesn't know what to gather. Maybe if one person gathers her legs. Although she starts to kick, the fireman grabs her feet. The other one stands up and hooks his hands under her armpits. Maeve giggles for a moment, liking the swinging motion. Then she starts kicking again, and they just make it in the door before her foot is free and comes down on the fireman's shoulder. They swing her down as I lock the door. Maeve throws herself against the chair by the window. Her head bangs back against the window, and the glass cracks. The fireman looks at me, frozen, horrified. Finally, the bigger one says, "You'll want to tape that until you can get someone to fix it." But I can barely hear him, and I don't have any masking tape, and Maeve is slumped off the chair and onto the floor. Cleo wakes up and comes running into the room, her breath taken away by the sight of real firemen. She's chewing a pacifier, and Maeve wants it. Maeve lunges for Cleo's neck and starts squeezing, and the closer fireman swoops down a giant arm and yanks Maeve back. Cleo tips back on the floor. I run for her, and she begins to cry, but the other fireman hands her his hat. Maeve is now giggling because she has found the buckles on the fireman's coat. He looks up at me. "She could have hurt the little one," he says. "Thank you so much. I guess I should call the doctor." They leave us with the fireman badge stickers. I want them to stay. Do you want to know what it's like to want to die every day? Or am I too morbid for you? Hell, I'm too morbid for myself. But here I am, and here you are finding out about it. This is what it feels like when you want to die every day. It feels like slipping into a pair of shoes that are filled with mud, that lead you to a track, that make you walk in circles as if you were following a carrot on a stick. But what's the carrot, and why do I feel that I'm forever in a chenille robe that is fraying every single day while I shuffle around and around in the same old pit of yellowing newspapers, yellowing fingernails, yellowing window blinds, yellowing teeth decaying me? It is a sinking so low that you want someone to come and push you all the way, let you glide down the hill till you're just gone. That's all. I just want to be completely gone. Okay, just a little bit more. This is when the narrator is in the psych ward. "The nurse told me you were screaming." "How embarrassing." "Why is that embarrassing? You did it in the right place, and it sounds like you were frightened." "I was frightened. I started to imagine what it was like to be Maeve. I wait for her to say something. Instead, she just stares at me until I surrender. It was very frightening. It was almost unbearable. The world must be hurting her every way she turns. If someone told me that their kid had mental impairment and severe autism, I'd wonder why on earth they had the kid at home. And that's the floodgate. I'm sobbing too loudly for my own good, but I've got the Kleenex under control at least. I shove hunks of it into my face and then hide my face on the table. Look at me, Bridget, says Dr. Virchow. I can't do that. You can. You have to repeat what you said so that we can both hear you clearly. I said I know that if someone told me that their kid... Bridget, why don't you be the person telling me about your kid? My kid has severe autism and mental impairment. Okay, done. Sounds like to me like you might be considering placement. I'm not. I can't abandon her. Bridget, you just told me that you can imagine how painful and confusing this world must be for her. I don't think abandonment comes into the picture. Do you think you could imagine the situation without words like abandonment? No, she's my daughter. If she were a child prodigy and someone wanted to give her a scholarship for a piano institute, can you imagine allowing her to go? Of course, she would have a sense of accomplishment, of place and attainment. She would work on a skill. And you wouldn't be abandoning her? I'd be helping her become herself. And maybe these people who run group facilities for kids with autism can help kids to practice skills that help them to become accomplished and what they are good at, help them have a sense of belonging and place. Maybe. Bridget, you weren't born as three people consisting of a pharmacologist, an occupational therapist, and a saint. You're a mother who loves her daughter and wants the best for her. Let's see what the mother thinks is best for the daughter. She stands up. And let's not attach judgment to it for now, okay? Let's say if we can do without the word abandon for a while. And the child and Cece were placed. Sometimes I feel the loss of Maeve as if I've shed her from my skin. The next sentence refers to the cousin, Nessa, who died. Sometimes I think of the day in Vermont with Nessa behind the waterfall when I let the water come crashing over me. I think that's what happened. Maeve has been rinsed from me, has been sent downstream on her own journey. And then I usually start to cry because I picture Maeve as a bright and singular fish escaping the pain of the higher rocks and falling to a pool of coolness, of safety. But now when I cry, I know what the crying is about. I know it's for mourning, for the sorrow and the weariness from saying goodbye every single day. I'm visiting her at the shelter and taking her swimming and transporting her to occupational therapy. Today, while we wait for her therapist, I put Maeve in the nylon mesh swing. She lengthens her body sideways. I tell her she looks like a mermaid caught in a net. I tug her toward me and kiss her face. Then I let her go and she stretches off and away, then comes veering back. She's laughing. She loves her. I catch her again, pull her far back in my arms, and let her go. A little update, I just want you to know. Do I have 5 minutes? Okay. This is what helped me. All services for early childhood special education in Minnesota are free, as they are in most of the country. We have a strong governor in Minnesota who is a friend to people with disabilities. I live in Hennepin County, which at the time of Cece's diagnosis had excellent services. And although she was originally placed in a group home far from us up in St. Cloud, I was able to contact my county commissioner and engage other parents to create a group home down near Minneapolis. Even when I thought I had no more energy for advocacy, I found it, and it worked. Cece was able to get a waiver, which is a complicated thing, and you may know, I can't talk about it. Her children's group home aged out into an adult group home, and she lives with 3 young men. She has her own room, a huge playroom with an indoor swing, and a giant backyard. They have round-the-clock care. The snag is the battle to keep staff. They get $12 an hour. We have ARC of Hennepin County, which has classes for siblings, parents, and persons with special needs. We have McPhail Center for the Arts, which has made music classes for children with special needs. And Minnesota is a remarkable state for services. Fortunately, it's a blue state in a sea of red states. She also had hippotherapy, horseback riding. It made her sit up proud and tall in the saddle, and it was beautiful. And I know that therapy services are different in every state and actually in every county. And I do suggest that families get in touch with ARC, I know they're nationwide, and use mental health professionals, schools, every possible advocacy group available. And beware of strange cures, of course. Don't read too much on the internet. Find other parents. Be fearless about talking to legislators. Know who your friends are in the state and in the Senate. Engage with Indivisible, which developed right after the election, and it's a group that says we're just not going to lie down and die. When you feel like your services are being threatened on a national or local level. And if anyone wants my email to contact me for any reason, I'm available to respond with my limited knowledge or just listen. You're not alone. Although there is a frightening epidemic of autism, there is also an incredible force of doctors and scientists and specialty therapists and advocates of all sorts working more diligently than ever before to help us and our children. We have come a long way from when Bruno Bendelheim referred to the cause of autism as refrigerator mothers. We may be many, but we are strong in our numbers, and we persevere. Thank you.